in the 20 to 25% range for turnover. And, you know, nationally you can see that gets up towards 26% and above. And as they poll the employees that are changing jobs and whatnot, what they're finding is a lot of people are actually leaving the industry altogether because it's not what, you know, they thought it was going to be. They get burned out by kind of what's happening. I've got some cool pictures I found on the internet as far as kind of describing what people think they're going to get into when they get into EMS. They, you know, think it's going to be a lot of lights and sirens and emergency stuff like they see on TV and pulling people out of burning cars and all that sort of exciting things. But unfortunately what they actually get is, although there is some of that, the vast majority of it ends up being relatively mundane with people that, you know, aren't very skilled at navigating the healthcare system, or they just don't have any other outlet. The page there that says the real EMS calls is, I opened up, when I was putting this together, I opened up our computer-aided dispatch system and literally just took a screenshot in that moment. I did not cherry pick it at all, but you can see, you know, at that time one of the ladies called because she said she needed help going downstairs to get on the bus. Another one called because she said she was constipated for 3 days. Gentleman called and said, and this was in March that I pulled this, said, since Christmas my arm hangs and I have soreness. And they're calling an ambulance, and we send an ambulance to respond to those calls. And, you know, when you get in the industry thinking you're going to help people, and those are the kind of calls you run, that tends to burn folks out and make them look for other opportunities, especially in a day and age where there's so many work-from-home opportunities and things like that. So, obviously, as you have staffing shortages and competition increases for those sorts of things. And I just grabbed some screenshots. These are actually about a year old now, so they've probably gone up a little bit, but you can see a lot of the fire departments and EMS agencies in the area, starting firefighter paramedics in the $75,000 to $90,000 a year range. Austin, Travis County just recently went to $30 an hour for their paramedics as well. This is, in 2020, we were around $17 an hour for paramedics. Now we're getting ready to probably go to $28. So in the course of 3 years, and that's just to try to attract and retain people. And one of the other challenges we've run into is a nursing shortage, which might seem a little bit strange since we have paramedics and EMTs on ambulances, but paramedics and EMTs can also go into hospitals, and the hospitals tend to have deeper pockets. And so we grabbed one of the screenshots from PHR, who we get along with very well, although they steal our employees. And they're advertising $8,000 signing bonus and $48 an hour for paramedics in those kind of settings. So it really creates the impetus to take a look at what we've always done and see if there are better ways to do it, better ways to meet the needs of the community. And again, a lot of organizations have done this throughout the country. The feedback we've gotten is a lot of them have adjusted their wages. They've seen increases, of course, because of that. We've also seen significant increases. We were just talking out in the hallway a little bit about the price of ambulances. We were fortunate enough, we contracted for our ambulances 6 years ago, and they wanted a 2% escalator, which worked out well for us. They actually sent an email asking to increase our prices by 18%, and we told them politely that we had a contract, and that's why we have contracts, right? So they've been slow in building them, but they are going to build them. So we've been a little bit fortunate there, but even getting chassis, to be honest with you, we ordered 2 years worth of chassis back in 2021, and they have just started coming in from the manufacturer, so the supply chain has been slowed down that much. The next slide there kind of shows your provider cost per trip, and really the point of that is it doesn't matter what kind of provider it is. As you all know, we're a public authority, so you all own part of MedStar, but fiber-based, private, everybody has seen significant cost increases. So a lot of times we get questions, we have loans for buildings and things like that, and we're talking with the bank, and the bank said, gentlemen we deal with said, well, why don't you just charge more? Pass it along. And the problem with that is the vast majority of the folks that we pick up are governmental payers, Medicare and Medicaid, and Medicare and Medicaid pays what they pay, and you take it, and you have to be happy with that. And you can't balance bill those folks at all. Commercial insurance, they pay a little bit more, but even the commercial insurers have started cutting down on their reimbursement rate. And then about 1 in 4 of the patients we pick up have no payment ability at all. So I was talking to a gentleman today that had a roofing company, and I told him, I said, it'd be like me going, or you going around and roofing people's houses and then knocking on the door and saying, hey, what do you think you can pay me for that roof? 1 in 4 are going to say nothing, but thanks for the roof. So it's not the best business model in the world, but that's kind of what we do with that. So the next question is really, so what can we do to mitigate the challenges that we have? And that's something that we've been working with a lot of the first response chiefs with, Chief Shelley and the other chiefs in the system. Again, we've been having conversations nationally about this. A lot of the systems have broken up how they respond to calls. Historically, you have a paramedic and an EMT on an ambulance. Paramedics are frequently called cardiac techs. The lady that needed help getting to the bus probably does not need a cardiac tech. So we put 2 EMTs on an ambulance. They're a little less expensive and a little bit more prevalent. We're also having some conversations within the system about the possibility of sending single response units out, so like in an SUV, on some low acuity calls to do assessments and make determinations on whether or not they need ambulances. Even buying ambulances the way that we're fortunate enough to be able to buy them, they're still about $300,000 to $350,000 by the time we put the equipment on them, so they're a very expensive ride. And MedStar has done a mobile integrated healthcare program since 2009, and what that program historically has done is taken high utilizers, people that might call once or twice a day, 911, and tried to figure out, why are you calling 911? A lot of times social issues, their air conditioning might not work, they might not, whatever it is, we have different ways that we can intervene and try to fix that. And so we've done that outside of the 911 system. There's some conversation about trying to do something like that within the 911 system as well, same way with nurse navigation on the 911 line. So trying to kind of counsel people, like telehealth basically, through that. Several others have looked at lengthening response times, because 2 to 5% of our call volume is what one would consider time-sensitive, life-threatening medical illnesses, like truly the stuff that you have to get people there, start doing CPR, that kind of thing. There's about 20% of the call volume that could deteriorate into that, and then, which means 75% of the calls that come in through the 911 system, most of those folks, their medical condition will not change if we did not come at all.
Dumb question, what does ALS mean in this context?
Advanced life support, so that's the paramedic, the cardiac tech, kind of thing. And so, so knowing that, it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense that, we'd be running out as quickly as we are to get to some of those lower acuity calls. Sure, everybody's read the news articles before of the lady or the gentleman who went to the ER and they waited in the waiting room for 7 hours and they left without being seen, and then the mean old hospital sent them a $700 bill. And people get all up in arms about that. I tend to think about that in terms of a municipality somewhere probably spent millions of dollars trying to get them an ambulance in 5 minutes to take them to the hospital waiting room where they waited for 7 hours, were able to leave, and still talk to the reporter the next day well enough.
So how will that, and maybe y'all haven't figured this out yet, so obviously a big thing you get judged on internally and externally is response time. So are you going to break out that you still have this very positive response time for the high priority things versus the somewhat frivolous calls that you get like that?
Yes, sir. Okay. So we actually, on March 1st, we started a reprioritization project is what we call it, and we looked at 3 years worth of call data, and we matched that up and said, hey, when this person called, we triage them, and they fall into what we call an emergency medical dispatch card, and it's a number with an alphanumeric behind it. And said, where did that fall, and then how did that patient present? And we looked for trends in those. And based on those trends, we assigned calls as high priority, so the priority ones today, they have a 51% chance of being a time-sensitive, life-threatening medical emergency. Priority 2s kind of fall in that other category that I was telling you they could freeze a little bit. And then when you get below 3, 4 is typically a car wreck, and 5 we go to without lights and sirens. And that's something we've been working on with the system, and Chief Shelley and the first response system as well, just trying